Hello everyone, and before I get far into this video, I want to say that there was a lot of stuff that happened this past week that I was really interested in. Outriders had its demo release, Halo Infinite released a high-level update, and Bungie released their own high-level update, and I want to make videos on all of these things. But ultimately, I decided to focus this week's video on Bungie's high-level update, which was named The Road to Witch Queen. This update outlines changes planned for Destiny in the upcoming year and beyond. These changes are all substantial, and will have some big impacts on the game. Some of them are good, others miss the mark in my opinion, and I hope to give an in-depth analysis of all of these changes, and explain why the changes will either be a net positive or a net negative for Destiny. But before I get into that, I just want to give a quick plug to my Discord. I'm trying to get the server to a decent enough size to start having community game nights and other events. So if you're interested in that, please hit up the link below. And with that out of the way, let's get back onto the Road to Witch Queen. The article begins with a short introduction from Joe Blackburn and is followed by a section titled The Witch Queen, Lightfall, and Beyond. This section outlines the main topics this article will address and gives some broad updates on Bungie's status as developers and their commitments to future content releases. The biggest thing to come from this section is that Witch Queen is being pushed back into early 2022. When I first heard this, I was disappointed, but I consider it very understandable. Beyond Light launched with laughably low amounts of content, and especially considering Bungie will be continuing to work from home for the foreseeable future, this seems like a smart move to help prevent a repeat of Beyond Light. But Bungie needs to deliver with Witch Queen. If Witch Queen releases with as little content as Beyond Light, and with as many bugs as Beyond Light, then Bungie has some serious problems at their studio that need fixing. But it's honestly just too early to start worrying about Witch Queen just because of how little we know about the expansion. So let's move on to the next section of the article, titled Rewards That Matter. This section focuses on Bungie backtracking on a lot of their sunsetting policies. Bungie will no longer sunset any weapons that are viable as of Season 13. This means that all weapons from before Season of the Worthy will still be unusable though in in-game content. This is undoubtedly an improvement though over Bungie's previous policy of sunsetting everything after a year. Thanks to this change, players will hopefully be able to focus on perfecting their builds instead of constantly maintaining their current builds. And again, while I do think this sadly means we will never see our Offstringers, Blast Furnaces, and Better Devils unsunset, at least all the loot we earn going forward will not be on a set timer. This makes the lower drop rates of weapons such as Bottom Dollar a bit more bearable. So, while we are still worse off than we were a year ago, this is an acceptable compromise in my opinion. But that does not mean that this does not introduce any new problems into Destiny. Namely, due to Bungie's changes to the loot pool and how weapons are obtained, many good weapons and specific roles of weapons are now unobtainable. And this was previously okay because those weapons were about to be sunset anyways, so most people were going to be unable to use them as it was. But now that sunsetting is undone, many of these weapons, such as the True Prophecy hand cannon, are prime candidates for the meta in many activities within the game. So again, while I do consider this change a positive for the game, it's still very mixed in how it affects the game as a whole because it introduces a lot of problems, but at the same time fixes a decent amount. The next section of the article, though, titled Power Play, is not so mixed. It is very, very much a positive for the game, with basically no negatives in my opinion. Basically, this section explains that every season will now increase the power cap by 10 instead of 50, which I think is a massive improvement. This means that at the start of every season, players will be at the quote-unquote hard cap and will spend the season getting the final 10 pinnacle levels. I think this is amazing for the game because it allows players to stay at that end game level throughout the entire year and just simply have to do some power grinding with the fall expansion, which they would be doing anyways just through playing the expansion's activities. I think this is a really good compromise between players like myself who despise the power leveling system and Bungie who uses it to draw out playtime. I don't have anything negative to say regarding this section because this change is 100% positive for the game in my opinion. So moving on with the article though, let's talk about the Angels of Death section. This part of the article is outlining changes Bungie is planning for the Crucible in upcoming seasons. The main things addressed are third-person peeking, stasis balancing, trials changes, and cheating. Let's start with third-person peeking. Basically, Bungie is removing third-person peeking one way or another. This will hopefully help with the overall slow pace that Trials matches are currently played at, along with improving the Crucible in general. Next, Bungie talks about upcoming changes being made to Stasis. Bungie says that they have the goal of bringing Stasis in line with the other light subclasses. This sounds good on paper, but looking at the changes they are proposing, I don't think they will solve the problem. The main problem with Stasis is that all aspects of the subclass offer high kill potential. Everything from Stasis grenades to sliding with Stasis subclasses equipped offers a high chance of securing a kill. This is because basically everything Stasis does either debuffs an enemy through slow, or it freezes them entirely. Both of these actions almost guarantee a kill and are very frustrating to play against. So sadly, unless Bungie completely overhauls how Stasis works in the Crucible, I believe it will always be annoying to play against and feel overpowered. And what I mean by overhaul is Bungie needs to entirely change how Stasis affects Guardian to Guardian combat, i.e. no more freezing or slowing from non-super abilities. And the only real way to accomplish this is something that was sadly absent from this entire article, and that is the separation of PvP and PvE balance. Everything from super cooldowns to weapon damage should be treated differently between these two aspects of the game, and it's super disappointing to see that it was not on Bungie's radar for the foreseeable future. Separating the sandbox could help solve a lot of the problems between trying to please PvP players and PvE players. The worst part is that this is a problem that has persisted since the launch of Destiny 1, but that's really a topic for another video. So let's keep looking at this article and more specifically looking at the Trials changes Bungie is proposing in this article. The first Trials change that Bungie is proposing in this article is to have a separation of players based off of skill tiers. I hope this does not mean pure skill-based matchmaking, because that could really screw over the higher level players, but at the same time, this does make me somewhat hopeful for the more casual players, as this should make the mode more approachable to them. And the next change makes me very excited for the mode, because Bungie is basically attempting to keep players on one card for longer, instead of players resetting after just one loss. This is a change that I kind of tossed out in a community post a little while ago, and I think it goes a long way to helping free up the lower win tiers of Trials to make it more casual accessible. This will hopefully give more casual players a realistic shot at winning some games, and actually give them a shot at winning some Trials loot beyond the bounty every week. And the final change that Bungie is proposing for Trials also plays into this more casual friendly approach, as they are looking to implement a way for solo players to participate in Trials. I personally hope this means we're getting an in-game LFG, but regardless of how Bungie approaches this, I think it will be a positive for the mode. So the final Crucible topic in this section is regarding cheaters. Basically, Bungie is once again saying that they are stepping up their anti-cheat systems, but as with the past 4 years of Destiny 2, it will remain to be seen if these changes actually work. So that rounds off the Crucible section of the article, so let's move on to the next section titled Praedyth's Revenge. This section is just talking about some changes to the world's first version of the Vault of Glass. None of the information is too groundbreaking, and isn't really anything that drastically affects the game as a whole, but you're more than welcome to read it, as I'll have it linked below. And then this brings us to the next section titled Getting Reacquainted with Adelaide, or A-1, which discusses how transmog will work in the upcoming seasons. Sadly, this looks to be just another bounty-esque system designed to force players to grind meaningless content in order to customize their guardians. Or Bungie gives players the option to purchase transmog tokens or whatever they're called with silver. The fact that transmog is even associated with silver means the in-game avenue to transmog your armor will probably be an absolute grindfest to encourage players to buy silver. This is super disappointing that what should just be a fun cosmetic choice for players is being treated as an in-game pursuit / bounty grind. On the bright side though, Bungie is reworking how ornaments work, as you're now going to be able to apply them to all of your armor pieces from one screen, which is a big quality of life change for the cosmetic side of the game. But that basically sums up the transmog section, so we are now at the final section titled Combined Fire. This section just talks about some random things that don't really warrant their own section, such as crossplay coming in 2 seasons, which that honestly probably could warrant its own section, Ikora being a meaningful character in Witch Queen because she hasn't really done anything since Season of Undying, stasis weapons coming in 2 seasons, which actually seems pretty interesting. I want to see how those work, or if they'll just simply be another damage type like Arc, Solar, and Void. And they announce a couple small tweaks to gilded titles. But that basically sums up the entire article. So if that's all you were here for and you just wanted to hear my opinions on some specific parts of the article, you're more than welcome to leave, but if you want to hear my broad thoughts on the article as a whole, please stick around. So probably my biggest thing that caught my attention in this article wasn't what was talked about, but more so what wasn't. Bungie didn't mention major ongoing problems such as the lack of content for core activities, the champion system rendering large amounts of builds useless, the enemy AI that is in desperate need of an overhaul, the pointless existence of blue, green, and white gear, the abysmal state of Gambit, and the massive amount of content that was vaulted with Beyond Light. Bungie also didn't really spend much, if any, of this article discussing cool new pieces of content or features coming to the game. Most of this article was spent with Bungie talking about changes that should have been made years ago, or Bungie fixing problems that should have been fixed before the respective content was released. The power leveling system sunsetting and the unbalanced state of stasis, the lack of anti-cheat, and the terrible current iteration of trials are all the biggest things people are thanking Bungie for discussing in this article. Yet when I read it, I think, shouldn't stasis have launched balanced? Shouldn't Trials have launched as a well-thought-out experience? Shouldn't a AAA multiplayer video game have a strong anti-cheat from its inception? Bungie drove Destiny so far into the ground that they receive praise for accomplishing basic tasks. And this is not the first time Bungie has done this. Look at Destiny 1's launch, Destiny 2's launch, and most recently Beyond Light. It seems that every 4 years or so, Bungie ruins or drastically reduces the quality of their game, only to have the next major expansion seem even better than it otherwise would be. Imagine if Destiny 2 launched with random rolls, special weapons, and reasonable ability charge times. I can guarantee Forsaken would not be regarded as highly or as groundbreaking as it currently is. So while most games would use an update like this to tease new pieces of content and features coming to the game, similar to what Halo Infinite does with its monthly updates, Bungie instead somehow generates enough hype to take over my YouTube homepage by announcing vague commitments to problems instead of real meaningful additions to the game. And notice how I said vague commitments to problems, because that's really all that was mentioned in this article. Bungie did not go in specifics to almost any of the problems they're addressing. They basically just boiled it down to, hey yeah, this thing you're complaining about, we're working on it. Like, they didn't really give you an actual solution to almost any of the problems. And this is really worrying for me, because Bungie has a terrible track record of fixing quote-unquote problems. Destiny 1's terrible story and lack of content, Destiny 2's terrible loadout system and ability timers, sunsetting and content vaulting are all Bungie's quote-unquote solutions to problems. So, overall, if Bungie does address these problems, I'll be happy. It'll make the game better, undoubtedly, but at the same time, I will not be very surprised if Bungie finds ways to completely fuck up these things that they discussed in this video. And from what I've seen from some things, such as Transmog, it seems that they already are doing that. But that's really all I have to say for this video. I will probably go more in depth on specific topics from this video in the future, so if you're interested in those, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss my next upload, and until next time, goodbye.